But that jamboree happening right now, you see it there on your screen, in that place is particularly chilling because in 1939, more than 20,000 supporters of a different fascist leader, Adolf Hitler, packed the garden for a so-called pro-America rally. Now, against that backdrop of history, Donald Trump is once again turning Madison Square Garden into a staging ground for extremism.
We're running against something far bigger than Joe or Kamala and far more powerful than them, which is a massive, vicious, crooked, radical left machine that runs today's Democrat Party. They're just vessels. In fact, they're perfect vessels because they'll never give them a hard time. They'll do whatever they want. I know many of them. It's just this amorphous group of people. But they're smart and they're vicious.
Trump just had a historic rally on the eve of the election at Madison Square Garden with 1 week left until Election Day. And there was over 20,000 people inside, over 40,000 people outside. And the mainstream media said it was an Adolf rally. Okay, I can't say certain words because of YouTube, but you get the idea. They said it was that exact rally. And we're going to go through those clips, not only of the mainstream media saying it, Tim Walz saying it, Hillary Clinton saying it. And we're going to see evidence of how that's not true, how Jews attended it, what they said it was like, and a final message that Trump has that breaks down what is really going on behind the scenes, why this rhetoric is coming up right at the end of the election. Let's jump into it. It's SeanDaniel here. If you like the videos, consider subscribing. First, let's check out the scene inside the rally. And this is in liberal New York City. Packed Madison Square Garden. Here's another view real quick before we get to the ridiculous claims. Look at that. That is, it's like a packed NBA game. And all in super liberal New York, which we are told super hates Trump because, you know, he's so bad. But not that he's just so bad. Now we're getting told that this rally is like one of Adolf's rallies. I know I can't say the word on here. I don't know how YouTube deals with that. So you guys get the idea. Listen to what paid people are comparing Trump's Madison Square Garden rally to.
But that jamboree happening right now, you see it there on your screen, in that place is particularly chilling because in 1939, more than 20,000 supporters of a different fascist leader, Adolf Hitler, packed the garden for a so-called pro-America rally, a rally where speakers voiced anti-Semitic rhetoric from a stage draped with Nazi banners. When a Jewish protester rushed the stage, the Associated Press reported, quote, instantly, a dozen or more stormtroopers set upon him, knocking him down and beating him as he held his head in his arms. Most of his clothing was torn from his body. Later, he was booked for disorderly conduct. Now, against that backdrop of history, Donald Trump, the man who has threatened to use the military against opponents he calls enemies from within, who has threatened to use the troops to quell what he says are lawless cities, and to use those troops to carry out mass deportations of immigrants, is once again turning Madison Square Garden into a staging ground for extremism.
Okay, that's MSNBC, which is a super liberal organization. And you can be like, okay, you know, that's just an organization that is trying to get hits and everything. No, this is a widespread thing said and promoted through the whole tree of the Democrat Party influence, from the Democrat Party people down through the news media. They all are repeating the same statement right at this specific time when they're supposed to be saying it, all the way from Tim Walz, the VP. Before we break down the ridiculousness of this comparison of Trump rally to one of Adolf's rallies, you see, it's the VP Hillary Clinton and these news organizations, which are in charge of sharing us information on what's going on. Listen to what he has to say, and we're going to compare it to this Holocaust survivor who actually went to the rally and what he has to say about Trump.
Donald Trump has descended into madness over the last few weeks. And I think some of you don't miss on this. Go do your Google on this. Donald Trump's got this big rally going at Madison Square Garden. There's a direct parallel to a big rally that happened in the mid-1930s at Madison Square Garden. And don't think that he doesn't know for 1 second exactly what they're doing there.
And you know, one other thing that you'll see next week, Caitlin, is Trump actually reenacting the Madison Square Garden rally in 1939. I write about this in my book.
I'm 94 years old.
Here's the Holocaust survivor comparing with the ridiculousness of what they just compared this rally to and Trump to.
And survivor of Auschwitz and the death marches. Adolf Hitler invaded Poland when I was 9 years old. He murdered my parents and most of our family. I know more about Hitler than Kamala will ever know in 1,000 lifetimes. For her to accuse President Trump of being like Hitler is the worst thing I've ever heard in my 75 years living in the United States. I know President Trump, and he would never say this, and Kamala Harris knows this. She owes my parents and everybody else who was murdered by Hitler an apology for repeating this lie.
Why should the Jewish people support President Trump?
Because he's a mensch. I believe that President Trump is definitely going to be good for Israel, because in everything that he's done up to now was in favor. He never double-crossed anyone, and he never showed any weakness. Watching President Trump pray for the hostages at the Ohel and spend time with him so meaningful. He has always stood with the Jewish people and the state of Israel.
So not only did an Auschwitz survivor explain what really happened there and his thoughts on it, but even at the rally, we had a ton of Jewish people attending this rally that's apparently so against them, and it has all these parallels to Adolf's party. And look at them getting along with all the Trump supporters. And inside the rally, we even had people raising an Israeli flag. But before we hear from a girl who actually attended the rally and is Jewish and explains what it was really like, and before I break down so much of the ridiculousness of this statement, and we see how Trump breaks it down, look at even Democrat Mayor Eric Adams of New York City speaking out against this, because they've come and attack him, and he's like, you know what, I'm going to speak it out. For him to say this against the whole framework of the Democrat Party, which is instructing every single person in the media, in their party, to promote this fascism, Trump and Adolf thing, it's amazing that he says this.
You know, I have been, had those terms hurled at me by some political leaders in the city, using terms like Hitler and fascist. My answer is no. I know what Hitler has done, and I know what a fascist regime looks like. I think, as I've called over and over again, that the level of conversation, I think we could all dial down the temperature. And I've heard people say that the former president should not be able to have a rally in Madison Square Garden. I strongly disagree. This is America. This is New York. And I think it's important that we allow individuals to exercise their right to get their message clear to New Yorkers. And our job as a city and as a police department is to make sure they can do that in a peaceful way. I think that we must be extremely cautious. The heat we turn up today, pre-election, is going to have to be the heat we're going to have to govern it. And I think we need to show a level of respectable communication. And so when people called me fascist and other terminologies, I didn't like it. And I don't think it's fitting to anyone to state that the former president is equal to being Hitler.
He said we got to tone down the temperature. And even though the temperature of his statement was kind of low, it was actually super high, because for him as a Democrat mayor of New York City, that's a sanctuary city, that is basically everything is pro-liberal, for him to say this tells you he's got to believe what he really said 10 times more, because he can't say fully what he wants to say and the ridiculousness of it. Also, he allowed Trump to have this rally in Madison Square Garden. He didn't shoot it down. So for him, a Democrat, to come out and say just the little things he just said about the ridiculousness of this comparison tells you just how ridiculous it is. Now let's hear from a Jewish girl who went to the rally and her thoughts on what it was like.
I just got back from Donald Trump's rally at Madison Square Garden. I'm a Jewish New York Republican, and I have seen the mainstream media calling this a Nazi rally. And that couldn't be further from the truth. There were so many Jews there, just like myself. There was Israeli flags, and nearly every single speaker talked about their commitment to upholding the relationship between U.S. and Israel. Not to mention all the Latinos for Trump, gays for Trump, and nearly every other group that would have never been allowed in if this was actually a Nazi rally. Kamala Harris could literally bring Adolf Hitler on her stage, and the mainstream media still wouldn't call it a Nazi rally. Their lies are futile. Trump is winning this election in 9 days. Make sure you get out, vote early, and vote for Donald Trump.
Before we see what Trump has to say on the breakdown of who is behind this whole narrative that's being pushed in this last week, let's explain a few things. This is the rally, okay? This is the bad rally, let's call it, that MSNBC is referring to. Adolf Hitler killed, exterminated 6 million people in Europe. Trump has just said he's going to go after the people in government that have been corrupt and make sure they get served time. That's one of their comparisons. Like the girl said, Adolf Hitler doesn't even allow people into his own meetings whatsoever. Trump allows everyone. People have been, oh my God, I don't even know how to say this. I'm living in Europe right now, and there's stories you hear from people that were around during this time when this went on, when they were a part of the resistance movement, and they got people they know got publicly executed, people they know got tortured, people they know got raped. There's whole areas where these extermination camps were, where they were burning hundreds of people every day. And to compare Trump, because he's taking a stand, to this type of a leader, and it's not just that it's the news organizations promoting this, okay? This shows you how deep it is that the main political people in charge of governing our country, making wise decisions, discerning between good and evil, making negotiations, decisions that impact you and me, they are willing to blindly turn their eyes from the truth and basically sell their souls in order to do what they're supposed to do, to stay in power, say what they're supposed to say, to stay in power. That these same people that are supposed to be in charge of us will literally go on the screen and compare Trump to that guy we just mentioned that did all of that stuff. Last time I checked, Trump's the one that's been tried to been killed, not trying to do the killing like Adolf did. Look at this, Tim Walz, the VP, the vice presidential candidate of the most powerful country in the world, blatantly saying that Trump is like Adolf Hitler. Watch how Trump breaks it down. And for him to say this at his New York rally is ballsy, is real, And it might not be the most hype clip you'll see today, because there's a ton of those on there, but this is a valuable clip, and we're going to end it right here.
But we're just not running against Kamala. I think a lot of our politicians here tonight know this. She means nothing. She's purely a vessel. That's all she is. When you see her up there talking about the grass on my front lawn, I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood and I had grass on my front lawn. Yeah, but we're asking, what would you do to fix the country? And why didn't you do it? You had almost 4 years. Why didn't you do this stuff? Now she's, she's becoming more MAGA than those politicians I just told you about from the different states. She can't put two sentences together. She's just like, she's really just like, in many ways, crooked Joe Biden. And she never said to us, she never told us that Joe was not functioning properly. She should have. Because, we're talking about the life of the most important country in the world. We need very smart people. We're running against something far bigger than Joe or Kamala, and far more powerful than them, which is a massive, vicious, crooked, radical left machine that runs today's Democrat Party. They're just vessels. In fact, they're perfect vessels because they'll never give them a hard time. They'll do whatever they want. I know many of them. It's just this amorphous group of people. But they're smart and they're vicious. And we have to defeat them. And when I say the enemy from within, the other side goes crazy, becomes a sound. Oh, how can he say? No, they've done very bad things to this country. They are indeed the enemy from within. But this is who we're fighting. These are the people who are doing such harm to our country with their open border policies, record-setting inflation, Green News scam, and everything else that they're doing. But we're not going to let it happen any longer. We're going to have the biggest victory in the history of our country on November 5th. It's going to be the biggest victory in history. We're going to make America great again, everybody.
That was a great way for him to turn it around, to end it on a positive note. But do you see what he said? They're just empty vessels. There's a whole amorphous group behind them leading and running the Democrat Party. There's certain people in power that make big decisions, and everybody gets in line. And it's serious to realize this just for your own sake, so you know what's going on in the country and you're not ignorant. And you don't just think, oh, it's these people just saying these things. Or, oh, it's these people saying these things about Trump and Adolf because, they're good, well-meaning people. No, they literally take orders, as it's obvious by this coordinated conversation that's been brought up during this last week of this election of comparing, ridiculously, Trump to a mass murderer, mass executionist, mass genocide guy. All because Trump is having such an impact and he's taking a stand. But it's not just those guys leading this conversation, this topic, this rhetoric. It's a whole behind-the-scenes group of bribes, manipulations, and they just want power, and they'll do whatever it takes to get it, even in coming up with such a ridiculous lie and promoting it all across the media, all across their rallies. This is something to be aware of, and thank God Trump at least spoke on it as much as he could right here. And if you're paying attention, you can see the depth of what he's talking about. It's SeanDaniel here. If you guys enjoyed the video, consider subscribing and make sure you go vote. Thanks for watching.